Hi guys, Lord Eugen here, bringing you another YouTube video, of course, because you're watching it. And I wanted to take a few moments, hopefully not too long, to talk about something that's sort of been sitting on my mind. And of course, make sure that you share your thoughts in the comments down below if you want to get in on the conversation. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Wii U. I know everybody's talking about Project NX right now, and I really don't think that that's fair to talk about it at this moment because we are still currently in this current generation. I mean, that's just like talking about the PS5 when we're still working on the PS4. I mean, come on. But all that aside, I was reading an article yesterday about sort of the challenges that the Wii U presents itself, and while I understand where it's coming from, I don't. So what am I talking about? I was reading a project about how indie developers sort of see the Wii U gamepad as a challenge to program for, and I have to disagree with this, but in a way it's kind of Nintendo's fault. What I mean is, if you look at, say, the Wii, they kind of force the motion controls down your throat, you know? If you didn't, I mean, yeah, sure, Smash Brothers and Mario Kart, there were games that made exceptions to this by allowing you to use like a Pro controller, or by allowing you to use a GameCube controller or something like that. But for the most part, games used the nunchuck and the Wii remote, and you had to use it to use the majority of their games. With the gamepad, it's almost like, and, you know, when I say this, I get that there are games like Nintendo Land that fully use the gamepad. There's no way that you can play games like Zombie U. There's no way that you can play games like Nintendo Land without them. It's just, it's not possible. The gamepad is required. They use a second screen. There is no way to work around that. But what I'm talking about is more or less games like Smash Brothers, for an example, where both on the 3DS and the Wii U, you have a system that has touchscreen controls, but you're not using it. And even on the 3DS, Super Smash Brothers on the 3DS at least does have touch controls. You know, not the way that I would use it, to where the characters are on the bottom screen and you tap them that way, but you can always, you know, tap the screen to change your color, to up the difficulty of the computer. You have that option, you know? It's there, you don't really need to use it, but it's there. But on the Wii U, it's absent completely. And I think the reason why it's absent completely is because of the alternate controls. And I know that Nintendo's doing that again because they want to make players feel comfortable. That's the reason why they gave you a GameCube adapter to make you play with the GameCube controller. They allowed you to use the Pro controller. I think they even allowed you to use a Wii Remote's Pro controller. They allowed you to use the Wii Remote and the Nunchuck, the Wii Remote, the Gamepad, the 3DS, whatever you're comfortable with, because that's what they want. It's a big game for them. It's a big deal for them. They want to make sure people can play it. But what I was sort of talking about is a little bit like, why don't you have that advantage there? Like, just like on the 3DS, you don't have to use the touchscreen, but you could for certain things. Why don't you have it to where people that are using the gamepad, they can change the difficulty of the character, they can select a character, they can do stuff like this if they choose. You know, it's sort of like how with certain games, like Watch Dogs, it really feels like they were designing the game to work with touch controls, and then they decided at the last moment to pull away and not develop it with touch controls. It really does seem like that's what they were doing. And to me, that's kind of unfair, you know, because you're talking about, yeah, sure, you might want to have it to its universal across the board, but why not give it that advantage? I mean, think about Assassin's Creed, for an example. If I remember correctly, I believe Black Flag, if you play it on the PS4, I believe it allows you to use the touchpad to like zoom in on the map and stuff like that. You can't do that, at least because there's no touchpad on the controller. So to my knowledge, you can't do that on the Xbox One. or on the 360. But that doesn't mean that Black Flag is exclusive to the PS4. It just means that it used that functionality. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so that's what it seems like is missing here. You got these indie developers or these third-party developers that are almost afraid to use the gamepad because they think like they have to use it. It has to make it an exclusive. And that's not necessarily true, because that wasn't true with the Wii. I mean, people were talking about we have to make a Resident Evil from the ground up. Why? Why did you have to make a Resident Evil from the ground up? Why didn't you just have it to where it used the Wii's Pro Controller? Or map a couple of buttons to a couple of different areas? Because if you look at a Wii remote with a nunchuck, it has the exact same amount of buttons as a 360 controller, as a PS3 controller. I mean, you just had to map the buttons somewhere else, but you could have used them. There was no reason why. And with the Wii U being just as powerful as last gens, actually more powerful than last gens, and pretty comparable to current gens, it's capable of doing the same thing. You know? So with a game like Watch Dogs, you could have used those touch controls. It's sort of like Rayman Legends, and how the game works more fluently and works better with the touch with the touch controls of the gamepad. But that doesn't mean you can't play it on the Vita, and it doesn't mean you can't play it on your Xbox One. It works better. It's more optimized, I guess, to work with the gamepad. What's wrong with doing that? And so this is something that I feel like I just needed to discuss, because I don't really get it. It feels like you have the opportunity here to show people how to use touch controls, and it's not really doing anything. You know? I mean, I get it for the most part. It comes down to developers, you know? If a developer wants to make a game like Resident Evil Revelations or like Ironfall Invasion that show off what the system is capable of doing, then you'll have that. But if all the developer wants to give you is some shovelware dance title, that's what they're going to give you. I mean, I know that it comes down to the developer ultimately. But what I think Nintendo, what you need to do is you need to sort of put your foot down and do what you did with the Wii and show people how you use it. You know, here's Red Steel, a game that, you know, plays horribly, and then here's Metroid Prime, the way that, you know, a first-person shooter is supposed to play. Here's the way that games are supposed to play. You don't know what to do with our gamepad? Let me show you. And I understand that there are games like I hear Super Mario 3D World needs it. But based upon the games that I have, Zombie U needs it. Unepic. I don't know if you ever played that game, but Unepic on the Wii U needs the gamepad. I mean, there's no way around it. You cannot, you know, switch between all this stuff and weapons and all this without using that gamepad. I mean, that's just a good example. Give us more stuff like that. So I really hope that with Star Fox and of Zelda Wii U and hopefully Xenoblade Chronicles X, that you really sort of step forward and show us how to use the gamepad, so that way maybe developers can go, oh, why didn't we think of that? Because that's what you needed with the 3DS. You needed the titles that use the 3D to its advantage, that use the technology to its advantage, and you need games that are going to use the gamepad to its advantage to show people that you don't have to build a game from the ground up. You can give us a third-party game, but maybe just optimize it. You know, to where maybe there's a map on the screen to sort of show people where they need to go. Or like with Darksiders, where the inventory is on the second screen, so rather than having to pause the game and remove yourself from the action to do something, you can just quickly swap weapons out, swap inventory, or whatever it is you need to do, and continue on with the game. It's sort of like how Monster Hunter is, and to an extent how Phantasy Star was back in the day, where you couldn't pause it, so you had to make sure that the area was cleared. Sort of like that. Give us a game like Phantasy Star where, you know, the action continues, but you have to handle everything, you know, live. Sort of like what Zombie U did. I think stuff like this that really shows how the gamepad can really be an advantage without making it feel like it's a hindrance. I think that will really help with the Wii U sales. Although really at this point, I don't think that the Wii U sales are going to matter anymore. Because my final point to this is that something that I've said time and time again, once you announce what's next, people don't care anymore. I talked about before about how I bought a Nintendo DSi and then they announced the 3DS. It made my DSi seem irrelevant. I just got this thing and already there's going to be new technology that's going to come out within a year. Why did I get it? That's sort of how I feel with the Wii U. Now granted, I still think that Project NX isn't probably going to come out till probably 2017 or 2018. So it's probably going to be a while. So I understand that we still have a good 2 to 3 years left on the Wii U. But you sort of see what I'm saying. It would be sort of like, why do we care about the Wii U anymore when you have Project NX? You know? But that's just my 2 cents, guys. I hope that I made my point clear. I know sometimes I ramble on, go around in circles, and I don't make my point clear. But that's sort of what I just sort of feel. Like, I was sitting there and I was playing Smash Brothers on the Wii U today, and I was just like, why don't they use the touchscreen? You know? Because it seems like it's... I understand that it's difficult, I guess, continuing on now that I've now thought at this point, is that it's difficult to choose what to do. Like, if you want to have a game that uses off TV as a functionality, then you have to have it mimic what's on the screen. But that's not necessarily true. And I'll tell you why in a moment. To you know, if you want to use it to what's off TV, it has to mimic or whatever. So if you want to have it to where it uses inventory, then it can't use off TV. But if it uses, you know, this, that, or the other, then it can't. But that doesn't seem like that's the case. It doesn't seem like that's the case at all. Because if you have something like Bayonetta that does all of it, it uses the touchscreen because I can play like normal. And then if I see something on the thing, I look down, it's mimicking what it's doing, so it's doing off-TV play, and I just tap the items that I want to buy, or tap whatever option I want within the menu, and I look back up. And if I decide, you know what, my kids want to watch the TV right now, I change the station, and I look down and I keep playing, and I can play it like normal and use the D-pad, or use the analog, or I can use the touchscreen for it. And then for certain parts of Bayonetta, you're also able to use the motion. I think it was during like the part where she's in the plane or something like that. You could use the motion controls. I mean, it used just about every single function that I could think of that a game should use for the Wii U, but it didn't hinder it. It didn't hinder it at all. If you wanted to play it with the Pro Controller, you could, but if you played it with the gamepad, you had an advantage of using the touchscreen, as well as you could also pull off some pretty sweet moves and attacks by using the touchscreen if you wanted to. You didn't have to. And stuff like that. So I see that my video is going on way longer than I expected to. And if you watch this whole thing, then I really appreciate it. But I think I'm just going to stop my video here because I think I've made a pretty valid point. I really think that we just need to get to a point where the gamepad doesn't feel like a hindrance. Because whereas I see the advantage of it, and I understand what their line of thinking was to come out with it, a lot of people feel like it's a hindrance. When really, I think they just need to have something that's like Wii Sports was for the Wii. That sort of shows people, this is what it was meant to be used for. This is what we had in mind when we designed this thing, to really sort of show people. But at this point, I feel like it might be too little too late because the system's been out for, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. It's been out for a while. It's already halfway through its life cycle. It hasn't made nearly as many sales as the other consoles have for some reason. Don't know why. And they've already announced their next project, their next system. So... But yeah, that's my 2 cents. I'm not going to drag this out anymore, guys. Thanks for watching, as always. And as I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to get in on the conversation, make sure that you put comments down below. But otherwise, I will see you next time.